I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The cool granite beneath my fingers was a stark contrast to the heat rising within me. Lila, my wife of 25 years, sat at the table, sipping her tea as if nothing was amiss. Her calm demeanor only served to fuel the storm brewing inside me. "By the way," she said, her eyes still fixed on her phone, "Sophia's wedding is family only. She thinks it'll be less awkward if you don't attend." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I struggled to find my voice, the room spinning around me. "Less awkward for who?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. Lila shrugged, finally looking up from her phone, but her gaze was distant, detached. "It's just a wedding, Ethan. Don't make a big deal out of it." A big deal. This was my daughter's wedding, the day I had dreamed about since she was a little girl. I had imagined walking her down the aisle, seeing the joy in her eyes as she took her first steps into a new life. And now I wasn't even invited. "I'm her father," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I've been there for every moment of her life. Every scraped knee, every late night fever, every ballet class, every breakup. I paid for it all, even when money was tight. And now I'm not even on the guest list." Lila sighed, setting her tea down with a clink. "You're overreacting. It's just one day." Overreacting. This was more than just a day. It was a culmination of years of being taken for granted, of being the steady, reliable backdrop to their lives. I had always been the one to hold everything together, to fix the problems, to be the calm in the storm. And for what? To be cast aside when it mattered most. I turned away, my chest tight with a mix of emotions I couldn't even begin to untangle. I walked to the living room, my laptop sitting on the couch, beckoning me with the promise of escape. Before I knew it, my fingers were flying over the keyboard, booking a flight to Santorini, a villa, the whole thing. I didn't tell Lila what I was doing, she didn't deserve to know. As I hit the final confirmation button, I leaned back and let out a long breath. I wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to beg to be included. If they wanted me there, fine. But I wasn't going to stay where I wasn't wanted, where I was just an afterthought. The next morning, I packed a bag, nothing fancy, just some shirts, shorts, my old sandals. I left a note on the counter, "Gone for a week. Don't call unless it's an emergency." I didn't look back as I shut the door, the weight of years of resentment lifting from my shoulders with each step. The drive to the airport felt like shedding a burden I had carried for too long. Lila's words echoed in my mind, "Less awkward," and each time, my jaw clenched tighter. How could it be awkward to have me there? I had raised Sophia, had been the one to stay up all night building that dollhouse she wanted for Christmas when she was 6, the one to drive her to every recital, the one to tell her she was enough when some jerk broke her heart in high school. By the time I boarded the plane, I was done thinking about it. The hum of the engines drowned out the noise in my head, and I stared out the window as the ground fell away. Santorini was waiting, blue water, white houses, a place where I could be something other than the guy who wasn't good enough for his own family. I didn't know what I would find there, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let them ruin me. Not Lila, not Sophia, not anyone. As the plane climbed higher, I felt something shift inside me. Not peace, not yet, but a spark of something new. I wasn't on their guest list, but I was still here, and I was going to figure out what that meant, one day at a time, starting with that first step off the plane into a world that didn't know how badly I was hurting. The moment I stepped out of the taxi and onto the stone path leading to my villa, the warm Santorini sun hit my face, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The driver hauled my bag behind me as I took in the breathtaking view. The Aegean Sea stretched out below, sparkling like it was showing off just for me, and the whitewashed walls of the cliffside glowed against the blue sky. I could smell the salt in the air, mixed with something sweet, maybe flowers, maybe just freedom. The guy at the check-in desk handed me a key and a glass of champagne, smiling like he knew I needed it. I took it, nodded, and walked to my room, pushing open the door to a view that stopped me cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the ocean, and a little balcony hung right over the edge of the cliff. I dropped my bag and stepped outside, the breeze tugging at my shirt. Back home, Sophia was probably fussing over centerpieces, those fancy ones Lila kept texting her about, the ones I'd overheard them planning months ago when I was still part of their world. Lila was likely posing for selfies at the bridal shower, flashing that smile she'd perfected over years of making everything about her. And me? I was here, 1,000 miles away, with nothing but the sound of waves and the cold fizz of champagne in my hand. I kicked off my shoes, propped my feet up on the balcony railing, and stared out at the water. It was quiet, quieter than my life had been in years. No arguments, No demands, no one asking me to fix something or pay for something or just shut up and take it. I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of my bare feet against the endless blue, and posted it online with a caption, "Silence looks good on me." I didn't think much of it, just a little jab maybe, or just a way to mark the moment. Within minutes, my cousin Marcus popped up in the comments with a string of laughing emojis and a living your best life. Huh? My sister Emma messaged me almost right away. Wait, weren't you supposed to be at the wedding? I didn't answer her, not yet. I wasn't ready to explain how I'd been cut out, how my own daughter decided I didn't belong at the biggest day of her life. I waited a bit, sipping my drink, watching the screen, half expecting something "where are you?" or even a "hope you're okay." But the silence from Lila and Sophia was louder than the calming sea. I set the phone down and leaned back in the chair, letting the sun warm my face. Good, good, let them keep their silence. I didn't need it. I waved at a waiter passing by and ordered another drink, something stronger this time, a whiskey on the rocks. The ice clinked in the glass when he brought it, and I took a slow sip, feeling the burn slide down my throat. The villa was small but perfect. White walls, a bed with crisp sheets, a little table where I could sit and watch the world go by. I didn't have a plan for the week, and that was the best part. No schedules, no obligations, just me in this place. I thought about home for a second, about the house I'd left behind, the kitchen where Leela had dropped the news like it was nothing, the empty spot where I used to park my car. Then I pushed it out of my head. They were busy with their wedding, their drama, their life that didn't include me. Fine, I'd make my own. The sun started dipping lower, painting the sky orange and pink, and I sat there, glass in hand, watching it sink into the water. My phone buzzed again, probably Marcus or Emma checking in. I ignored it. This was my time, my view, my peace. I wasn't going to let anyone pull me back into the mess I'd escaped. The whiskey was smooth, the breeze was cool, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to be anything for anybody. I finished the drink, set the glass down, and leaned my head back, closing my eyes. The sound of the waves rolled in steady and slow, and I let it carry me away. Whatever they were doing back home, it didn't matter. The view was better from here, and I was going to soak in every second of it. The next morning, I woke up to the soft sound of waves crashing below my villa. The morning sun sneaked through the curtains, warming the room. It was day 4 in Santorini, and I'd started to feel like a different man, lighter, like I'd left more than just a suitcase behind. I stretched, rolled out of bed, and padded barefoot to the balcony, coffee in hand, letting the sea air wake me up properly. My phone had been off since yesterday's barrage of calls, and I wasn't in a hurry to turn it back on. Whatever mess was waiting for me could stay there. I was halfway through my coffee, watching a fishing boat bob on the horizon, when I finally caved and powered up my phone, just to check the time. The screen lit up with notifications, but one stood out: a long text from Sophia sent at 3 a.m. Her time. Dad, please call me. I messed up. That was it. No details, no explanation, just those words staring back at me. I set the phone down and took a deep breath, my gut telling me something big had gone down, but I wasn't ready to dive in yet. I finished my coffee, slow and deliberate, letting the bitter taste ground me. Then I scrolled back through the missed calls and voicemails. Lila, Colin, even a no-caller ID, but I didn't listen to them. Instead, I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring, his voice loud and amused. "Man, you picked the perfect week to disappear," he said, laughing. "That wedding was a total disaster." I leaned against the railing, the phone pressed to my ear, and listened as he laid it out. Turns out, Sophia and her fiancé, Bryce, didn't even make it to the cake cutting before it all fell apart. Bryce found some texts on her phone from her ex, late-night messages from the night before the wedding, and lost it. They fought right there in front of everyone, voices raised, guests shifting awkwardly in their seats. Then Bryce's mom jumped in, yelling at Lila, saying she'd push Sophia into the marriage or some nonsense like that. Colin, true to form, got sloppy drunk and started shouting at the DJ for playing the wrong song. Marcus said half the guests bailed before the first dance, and the rest just sat there watching the chaos like a bad movie. No speeches, no sparkler send-off, no happy ending. Just a big, ugly mess. I stood there, the sun climbing higher, and felt a strange mix of nothing: no shock, no sadness, just a blank space where I thought I'd feel something. "Yeah," Marcus finished, still chuckling. "You didn't miss much." I thanked him, hung up, and stared at Sophia's text again. I messed up. Yeah, she did, but it wasn't my job to fix it, not this time. I could picture it so clearly: Lila spinning around, trying to smooth things over with that fake smile, Sophia crying into her bouquet, everyone looking for someone to blame. In me, I wasn't there. They'd made sure of that. I set the phone down and walked back inside, grabbing my sandals and a towel. I didn't call her back. I didn't call Leela either. Instead, I booked a massage at the Villa Spa, something with hot stones, the kind of thing I'd never bothered with before. The lady at the desk smiled and said I'd feel like a new man after. Good, I thought. That's what I want. The massage room smelled like lavender, and the table was warm against my back as I lay there, the therapist's hands kneading the knots out of my shoulders. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift not to the wedding, not to Sophia's tears or Leela's excuses, but to the sound of the sea outside, the way the air felt clean here. They'd had their fairy tale day, or at least they tried, and it blew up in their faces. I wasn't smug about it, but I wasn't sorry either. I'd spent years being the one who held everything together, paying the bills, calming the fights, making sure everyone got through. And the one time I stepped away, it all crumbled. Maybe that should have made me feel needed, but it didn't. It just made me glad I was here, not there. The massage ended, and I walked out looser, lighter, the sun still high overhead. I grabbed a gyro from a stand down the street, greasy, warm, perfect, and sat on a bench overlooking the water, eating slow, letting the crumbs fall where they wanted. I finished my gyro, wiped my hands, and stood up, stretching. The sun was warm on my face, and the breeze carried the faint scent of salt and distant flowers. I walked along the cobblestone streets, the sounds of the village children laughing, vendors calling out their wares, the distant hum of conversations in languages I didn't understand wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. As the sun began to dip, casting a golden glow over everything, I found myself at a small cafe, the outdoor seating shaded by a vibrant bougainvillea. I ordered another coffee, this time a strong Greek one, and sat back, watching the world go by. I thought about the wedding, about the chaos Marcus had described. I could almost see it, the shocked faces, the awkward silences, the frantic attempts to salvage the day. And in the midst of it all, I could see Leela, her eyes darting around, looking for the one person who always stepped in, who always fixed things. But I wasn't there, and for the first time I realized that maybe, just maybe, that was okay. The days in Santorini began to blend into a rhythm of tranquility and self-discovery. Each morning, I woke up to the gentle sound of waves and the soft glow of the sunrise, a stark contrast to the chaotic mornings back home. My routine was simple: coffee on the balcony, watching the sea come to life, and then venturing out to explore the island. Each day brought new experiences and a deeper understanding of myself. One morning, as I sipped my coffee, I decided to check my phone. There was an email from Lila, sent late the previous night. No subject line, no pleasantries, just her words dumped onto the screen. You've made your point. Come home so we can talk. I read it twice, letting it sink in, and felt my jaw tighten. Made my point. Like this was some game, like I'd flown halfway across the world just to teach her a lesson. There was no apology, no I was wrong, just that same old tone, like I was a kid who'd stormed off and needed to get over it. I set the mug down and stared out at the water, the waves rolling steady and slow. She didn't get it. She still thought this was about her, about them, about fixing what they'd broken. I wasn't ready to go back. Not to that life. Not to being the one who always held it all together while they took me for granted. There was also a text from Sophia, sent an hour after Lila's email. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I let Mom and Bryce's family talk me into the family-only thing, and I was stupid. I should have fought for you to be there. Please call me. I hate this. I read it again, slower this time, and felt a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe sadness, but it faded quickly. She was sorry now, sure, after the wedding crashed and burned, after she realized she couldn't handle the fallout without me. But where was that apology when she was making the guest list? Where was that remorse when she let Leela shrug me off like I didn't matter? I didn't text back. I didn't call Leela either. Instead, I typed a reply to Leela, short and sharp, extended my stay. I hit send, turned the phone off, and leaned back in the chair, the coffee still warm in my hands. Let them sit with that, let them stew in the silence they'd handed me first. I finished the coffee, got up, grabbed my sandals and a light jacket, and headed out. I didn't have a plan, just wanted to walk, to feel the ground under me and the air on my face. The streets of Oya were waking up, shopkeepers sweeping their steps, tourists snapping pictures of the white domes against the blue sky. I wandered through the alleys, the cobblestones uneven under my feet, and thought about how they still didn't see it. Lila thought I'd come running back, because she said so. Sophia thought a late apology would erase the sting. They didn't understand that this wasn't a tantrum, it was me finally choosing myself. I stopped at a little cafe, ordered a pastry and another coffee, and sat outside, watching people pass by. The pastry was flaky, sweet with honey and nuts, and I ate it slow, letting the crumbs fall where they wanted. Back home, they were probably pacing Lilaing about how stubborn I was, Sophia biting her nails like she did when she was stressed. I could almost hear them. He'll come around, he always does. Except I wasn't, not this time. I paid the bill and kept walking, the sun climbing higher, warming the stones around me. I found a spot overlooking the caldera, just a low wall, and a drop to the sea, and sat there, my legs dangling over the edge. The wind picked up, tugging at my hair, and I closed my eyes, letting it wash over me. They'd made their bed, Lila with her tea and her shrugs, Sophia with her guest list and her tears. Now they could lie in it. I wasn't their crutch anymore. As I sat there, the realization hit me. For years I had been the backdrop to their lives, the steady, reliable figure who held everything together. I was the one who paid the bills, calmed the fights, and made sure everyone got through whatever crisis they were facing. And for what? To be cast aside when it mattered most. To be taken for granted, to be an afterthought? I got up, dusted off my hands, and headed back to the villa. The day stretched out ahead of me, full of possibilities. I decided to book a massage at the villa spa, something with hot stones, the kind of thing I'd never bothered with before. The lady at the desk smiled and said I'd feel like a new man after. Good, I thought. That's what I want. The massage room smelled like lavender, and the table was warm against my back as I lay there, the therapist's hands kneading the knots out of my shoulders. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift not to the wedding, not to Sophia's tears or Leela's excuses, but to the sound of the sea outside, the way the air felt clean here. They'd had their fairy tale day, or at least they tried, and it blew up in their faces. I wasn't smug about it, but I wasn't sorry either. I'd spent years being the one who held everything together, paying the bills, calming the fights, making sure everyone got through. And the one time I stepped away, it all crumbled. Maybe that should have made me feel needed, but it didn't. It just made me glad I was here, not there. After the massage, I felt looser, lighter. I walked out of the spa, the sun still high overhead, and decided to grab a gyro from a stand down the street. I sat on a bench overlooking the water, eating slow, savoring every bite. The shrimp was salty and sweet, the fish flaky and soft, and the waiter brought me another glass of wine without me asking. I nodded my thanks, feeling a sense of contentment wash over me. As I sat there, I thought about the journey that had led me here. The hurt, the anger, the sense of betrayal, they were all still there, but they felt distant, like echoes of a past life. I thought about Sophia's text, about the plea in her words. I messed up. And I thought about Lila, about the way she had always taken me for granted, about the way she had dismissed my pain. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I realized that their actions, their mistakes, didn't define me. I was more than the sum of their expectations, more than the role they had cast me in. I was Ethan, and I was here, in this moment, choosing my own path. I finished my wine, the glass cold in my hand, and went inside. The bed was waiting, and I climbed in, the sheets soft against me. Sleep came fast and deep, and I dreamed of the sea, not of home, not of them, just the waves and the open sky. The days in Santorini had flown by, each one bringing me closer to a sense of peace and self-discovery. But as my extended stay came to an end, I found myself facing the inevitable return home. I woke up on my last day in Santorini with the sun already high, streaming through the villa's windows like it was urging me to get moving. I'd slept hard and deep, the kind of sleep that leaves you feeling renewed. My flight home was that night, and I could have spent the day packing, worrying about what I'd find when I got back, but I didn't. Instead, I made coffee, took it to the balcony, and stood there, watching the sea sparkle under the morning light. 9 days here, and I wasn't the same guy who'd stepped off that plane, hurt and angry, running from a guest list that didn't have my name. Now I felt solid, like I'd built something out here, something they couldn't touch. I finished the coffee and decided to hike one last time, to take in the beauty of the island before I left. I grabbed my sandals, a bottle of water, and headed out, following a trail along the cliffs. The path was rough, winding up through rocks and scrubby bushes, the sun hot on my back. I walked steady, my breath even, feeling the burn in my legs and liking it. The view opened up at the top, blue water stretching forever, white houses clinging to the hills, and I sat on a flat stone, wiping sweat from my forehead. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out. It was another missed call from Sophia, the third that week. I hadn't answered any of them, hadn't listened to the voicemails piling up from her and Lila. I stared at her name on the screen, then turned the phone off. I wasn't ready, not yet. I got back to the villa by noon, showered, and packed slow, folding my shirts, tucking my sandals into the bag. I'd heard from my sister Emma a few days ago. Lila had moved into Aunt Noel's to give space, whatever that meant. Sophia was still calling, still texting, but I didn't owe them my time. I sat on the bed, bag zipped, and left her one voicemail, short and calm. When you're ready to talk like a daughter and not a PUR crisis, let me know. That was it. I hung up, grabbed my stuff, and checked out. The taxi was waiting to take me to the airport. The flight home was long, but I didn't mind. I watched the clouds out the window, the world shrinking below, and felt a quiet kind of strength, like I'd claimed something back out there. When I landed, the air was colder, sharper, and I drove home in the dark, the house empty when I walked in. Lila's stuff was gone, her coats, her shoes, the clutter she always left on the counter. It didn't feel lonely, it felt clean. I dropped my bag, poured a glass of water, and stood in the kitchen, the silence thick around me. The next day, I dug out my old wedding suit, the one I'd planned to wear for Sophia, the one I'd pressed and hung up months ago. It felt heavy in my hands, like a memory I didn't need anymore. I drove it to a charity shop downtown, handed it over with a nod, and walked out lighter. Back home, I found a flyer for a hiking group stuck in the mailbox, local guys who met up on weekends to hit the trails. I called the number, signed up for the next one, and marked it on the calendar. That night, I cooked myself dinner steak, simple, the way I liked it, and ate at the table. No TV, no phone, just me and the food. I thought about the wedding, the chaos Marcus had described, Rose's laugh, the way it all fell apart. I hadn't missed a thing. They'd had their day, their chaos, and I'd had my 9 days of sun and sea and peace. If they thought I was overreacting, let them. I wasn't coming back to the old me, the guy who waited for them to see him, who fixed their messes and took their shrugs. I washed the dishes slow and careful, the water warm on my hands. The house was mine now, not theirs, not anymore. I went to bed early, the sheets cool, and slept without dreaming. The next morning, I woke up to rain tapping the windows, soft and steady. I made coffee, sat by the glass, and watched it fall. Sophia would call again. Maybe Lila might show up, bags in hand, expecting me to take her back. But I wasn't waiting for them. I had my hikes, my quiet, my life. They'd underestimated me, and I was fine with that. I wasn't the backdrop anymore. I was the whole damn story. As I sat there, the rain a soothing rhythm against the window, I felt a sense of contentment. I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do, and for the first time in a long time, I was at peace. I finished my coffee, set the mug down, and leaned back in the chair, letting the quiet wrap around me. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it head-on my own terms. The journey I'd undertaken had been one of self-discovery and growth. I'd faced my pain, my anger, and my fears, and I'd come out stronger. I'd learned to choose myself, to prioritize my own well-being, and to find peace in the midst of chaos. And as I looked out at the rain, I knew that whatever came next, I was ready. I was Ethan, and I was enough.